بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. In the name of Allah, and I praise God the Almighty, the Lord of the worlds, and I invoke and send my salutations and invoke God's peace and blessings upon His Prophet Mohammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the members of his household and his companions. Today I just wanted to talk to you about a very, hopefully it's an interesting topic. It's a bit academic in nature, but I'm going to make it just as simple as possible. And it's just, my intent is, inshallah ta'ala, maybe make this a segue for future, or make this an intro for future, maybe higher level discussions, inshallah ta'ala. What I wanted to talk to you about is the objective of Sharia. And Sharia is Islamic law. It's also known as maqasid. Like that? Okay. It's also known as maqasid. So Sharia is law. I mean, literally, by the way, Sharia, the word Sharia in Arabic means path or way, right? That's what it means, Sharia. When people say Sharia, it just means path or way. That's what it means. In the Quran, God the Almighty says, for every nation, we have set a way, like a Sharia. They had their own Sharia. So it's the way or the path of doing things, right? And it refers to divine law, right? Divine law that came to regulate and govern people's affairs. Right? So I thought talking about it, first of all, will give us better understanding of what Islam or the Islamic law aims to achieve, right? What are the objectives? And number two, it will give us an appreciation of, maybe help us appreciate what God the Almighty or His Prophet, peace be upon him, instructed us to do or told us to stay away from. That there is a wisdom behind it. It was not meant to impose restrictions and limit our freedoms, but rather it was meant to regulate, organize, and manage and preserve our affairs, right? So every piece of legislation, every commandment that we find, it came to preserve, protect, and promote one or more than one of these objectives. So the scholars looked and analyzed and studied, Islamic texts, what is in the Quran and in the prophetic tradition. They studied it and they looked at it and they said, "Whoa, everything leads to one or more of these 5 end goals," right? So for us to know these 5 things and understand them is I think at least key. We may not be able to see it in every aspect because you need more tools to achieve that. But just as for us, it's very important just to have that understanding, right? To begin with, as a general principle, divine law came to for the benefit of people, right? And for the prosperity of people, right? And to fulfill the needs of people, individuals and communities. So now we have individuals, and these are the small components. And then you have families, and then you have communities, right? And there are needs and rights that everyone has. Individuals have rights and needs families have rights and needs, and the society or the community has rights and needs. Sometimes they work in unison, sometimes they could conflict, right? Sometimes we have, like, individuals may want something that could go against the interest of the public or the interests of the, what's that? Yeah. So divine message came and kept that into consideration to help people, like, organize and regulate and the affairs of people. Otherwise, we're going to have conflict, right? So who is to say whose right or need is more important, right? So that's what it came for. And then when it comes to the interest of people, it's scholars realize that it's divided into three different categories or levels. The first category or level is something that they call daruriyat. Darura means necessity, like dire, extreme necessity, without which life is not possible. You can't, right? And they said, and on the top of these 5 necessities are the 5 objectives that we're going to be discussing today, right? So there are 5 things they say any human being or family or society needs to keep intact and preserve. These are the 5 necessities without, well, actually there are more than 5 necessities, but it's important to understand the necessities. Necessities means, like, life is not possible without them. You can't function. The second level of interests that people have are what is known as hajat or hajiyat. And that could be translated into needs. Needs that people have. They're not as necessary as the necessities, but they're extremely important. Life is possible, but it could be a little difficult. You get my point? Right? And the absence of these needs, it will create imbalance. The absence or the lack or the of means to fulfill these needs can create an imbalance, whether it's in the individual's life or the family's or at the societal level. And then the third category is what they call tahsiniyat, right? The cosmetics, the extra, like, luxuries and great things that we should have, that life will become much more enjoyable and very comfortable, very similar to what we have here, right? What people dream to have. These are like the extra things, right? Exactly, right? Unfortunately, by the way, you know what causes most people's misery, like in our society, in the most prosperous of societies, is the mess that they see in these areas. Right? Okay. So what are the scholars studied the text and they concluded that there are 5 objectives. Sharia came with 5 to preserve 5 objectives. Objective number 1, religion or deen. Right? Deen, religion. The Sharia or divine law came to preserve deen. And most scholars, if not all of them, put this element at the top. It's the most critical, most important element. Of course, there is a debate amongst the scholars. Does it come before the second one that we're going to talk about, or is it really top? They say it is the most important necessity. Religion, right, is not a need, it's a necessity, right? You need it for that which defines you, and that is your core, like that your essence, which is your spirit. That's what distinguishes us as human beings, right? As social beings that have that have the ability and the capacity to reason and organize and govern ourselves and determine, and also as custodians and as agents, right, of God to inhabit, to rule, to preserve this planet. So when God the Almighty created human beings, and placed us on this planet, He made us the stewards, right? And that came with a condition. And God the Almighty gave us tools and skills and certain capacities that God's other creations may not have, right? Like in the animal kingdom, stuff like that. So we are indeed in charge as human beings. We're talking as human beings. So that came with a responsibility. That responsibility cannot be realized or fulfilled without religion, right? In addition to the fact that the most valuable, the greatest asset that we have is what? Our spirit, right? Our soul. The soul needs divine guidance and needs religion. So to preserve people's religion and also choice of religion, right? Sharia came and legislated. Right? People should be able to get to know their Lord and worship Him freely for their own spiritual fulfillment. Someone might say, but how could religion be more important than anything else? Because religion, not only is it important in this life, but it's the one of all the elements, is the one element that is going to make a difference when? In the hereafter, in the life after. Right? So they put it at the top of these objectives. Every commandment. And they say not only that, another thing that makes it the most important is because every commandment, no matter what that commandment says, came for the preservation and for the promotion of what? Religion. And spiritual enlightenment. That's what it came for. Everything. Even the ones that seemingly seem to be, like obvious, what we look at as something very personal. This morning, I mentioned after Fajr prayer that the Prophet, peace be upon him, informed the companions that when a couple are intimate, they will be rewarded. Some of the companions said, Messenger of God, why would anyone, they said, would one of us fulfill his own natural physical desire and be rewarded for it? And the Prophet said to them, if he was to fulfill or seek the fulfillment of his natural human desire through unlawful means, would that be a sin? They said, yes, indeed. So the Prophet said, likewise, when someone fulfills it through lawful means, through marriage, they will be rewarded. Subhanallah. Right? So religion, so every commandment came to promote, preserve religion. Right? And every prohibition was put in place to preserve religion. Right? So sometimes we may be prohibited from doing something and we may not see any physical danger. Right? There's no risk on the health. And you wonder, why is this prohibited? It's not a poison. It's not going to weaken me physically. It's not going to hurt anyone. Perhaps it's a very toxic, it might be highly toxic to you spiritually. That's why you are told to stay away from it. Right? So every commandment came to preserve religion. So that's the first objective, to preserve and promote religion. Second one is to preserve and promote life. Preserve and promote life. Right? The sanctity of life is established in the Book of God and in the tradition of His Prophet, peace be upon him, right? And that's why so again, sometimes they may call it preserving self, right? Or life, right? So preservation of self, life, right? And that's why, certain command. That's why, for instance, God forbade us, and we're prohibited from wasting life, wasting someone else's life. Murder is one of the greatest sins because it violates one of the 5 most basic necessities and objectives. So Sharia came to preserve life, right? And then, you know how like when people say, are you pro-life or pro-choice? What do we say? Sharia came to preserve life, right? If there is a life, if life is established, taking that life will have to be justified, because there's sanctity to life. Again, whether it's your life or the life of someone else. And in Islam, every life matters. Life of every individual, of every human being, all lives are at the same level of sanctity. Unless the individual does something to lose or to violate the sanctity of his own life. So if someone murders someone else, then this person has wasted someone else's life, and he has violated the sanctity of life, and his life is now at risk of being, he would be subject to capital punishment. And of course, it's the right to seek capital punishment is given to the heirs of the victim. Okay. The scholars said that, there's a very classical, and I'm trying to simplify this as much as I can. Sometimes it's very hard to simplify something that is simple. Scholars said that if a person, let's take a hypothetical case. If a person puts a gun to someone else's head and say to that individual, unless you kill this person, this other person, you'll be killed. Is this person allowed to take this other life? Before you answer this question, so just keep this in mind. Let's say if someone comes and puts a gun to this individual's head and says to him, unless you eat pork, which is prohibited. See, eating pork and drinking alcohol, it's a violation of what? The first necessity, which is religion, right? But if someone puts a gun to your head and says, unless you drink alcohol or you eat pork, I'm going to shoot you. What does Islam say? It makes it permissible for you to actually eat, not enjoy, but eat that pork, right? And drink that alcohol to preserve what? Life. Because of the sanctity of life. Some scholars said that means life as an element is more important than religion, and the other scholars said no. The preservation in this life is in and of itself preservation of what? Religion. The religion itself has a mechanism within it, right? Where it allows you to preserve your life and do something that is prohibited otherwise, because you are in this dire, very, emergency, severe, situation. So in this case, the person ought to or should consider consuming the prohibited substance to save their own lives. However, they said, going back to the first case scenario that I mentioned, right? If a person is told to kill someone else, that involves 2 violations. One, you're violating the first objective, which is religion, because religion prohibits violating the sanctity of someone else's life. The second one is it violates the second objective, which is preservation of life, right? Someone might say, but my life is going to be taken if I don't take someone else's life. The scholars concluded, they said, all lives have the same level are the same level of sanctity. Someone else's life is not any less than your life. So therefore, to save your own life, you can't take someone else's life. So it's prohibited. You see this? Do you see where I'm going with this, right? So the scholar said, no one can use that. Like, no one is compelled or forced to take someone else's life. Murder is not allowed, right? The only time it's allowed is when you are defending yourself, right, against someone else who he himself or she came to take your own life, and you have no choice but to defend yourself, right? And maybe defend your family and your property. Or there are, of course, other cases. If someone commits murder, then they have wasted their own life. The third element that, or necessity, that Islamic divine law came to preserve is it came to preserve what is known as aql, mind, or reason, your mental capacity, right? It's what distinguishes us. It's, the scholars looked at, laws in the Quran and in the prophetic tradition, and they said, mind and reason, makes us very special, right? Preserving it, right? Promoting its enhancement, and preserving it and protecting it is one of the basic objectives of Islamic law. And it's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has to be preserved. So therefore, Sharia came and said, you're not allowed to do anything that can impair your mental capacity and your judgment. You can't do anything. And that's why drinking intoxicants, right, was declared forbidden and declared a major sin, because you're messing with that. That's why taking any substance that could affect your mental capacity is prohibited, right? And the only time it's allowed is under extreme circumstances, like someone putting a gun to your head and saying, if you don't drink alcohol, then I'm going to kill you. Or if you need to undergo surgical procedure and they have to give you something that is going to knock you out, right? This is something very serious. Only then it's allowed. Why? Because preserving life comes before it. It's number two, right? And because without life, your mental capacity will be of no value. So to preserve your life and to save your life and to give you the treatment that is necessary, you could take something that could affect or impair your mental capacity or judgment. Right? And they also said the mental capacity is very important in order for you to what? Practice and preserve the first objective. So it's all connected, right? Number 4, and I don't want to take too long here. The fourth element or objective that Islamic law came to preserve is, and there's difference of opinion in the order of this last one, is preservation of lineage or offspring, right? Extension, legacy, life, lineage, children. I like to translate it. This is a literal translation to it, to the term that is used in our tradition. I would like to add to it, or I would say part of that is preservation of family. Preservation of family. Family is the building block and the most basic unit of a society. Islam came to preserve individuals, families, and societies. And in order to preserve society, we have to preserve the family. As a matter of fact, in order to have healthy individuals, we have to have what? Strong and healthy families. In order for you to pass on the legacy, in order for us to have believing societies and communities that will continue to worship God and maintain and fulfill God's plan, or God's implement God's law, divine law, there has to be healthy and strong families and societies and communities. So the preservation of family is very important. Thus, the Islamic law came to ensure that anything, like for instance, so Islamic law came and promoted and encouraged, right, marriage, because marriage is the proper way of building a healthy family, right? Or whatever, like qualifies you to get married, right? It made parenting and raising a child something very noble and something that should be sought, right? And something for which you get a lot of reward. And not only that, but parents are given a lot of rights in Islam, right? Because they're fulfilling this very important role, preserving the community, preserving the society, allowing it to continue, allowing it to grow, right? It also regulated the relationship between the genders, right? How men and women are supposed to deal with interaction, right? Gender relations and interaction was regulated for the preservation of family values and family and our lineage and progeny, basically because it's the future, right? It also prohibited certain actions that could jeopardize or put family and family value and family ties at risk. So fornication, having illicit relationship, sex outside, outside marriage was prohibited because it will cause deterioration in the family. It will mess up. I mean, nobody is going to know who's their parent. There will be no family ties. It will be broken. The most important unit of the society is going to fall apart. Once family falls apart, the whole society falls apart. And if the society falls apart, it's going to be hell for individuals, spiritually speaking. So it's also tied and as a matter of fact, in the Quran, there's always constantly connection made between loss of family values and violence. Right? Violence that leads to death, mayhem, and destruction. There's connection between the two, right? Bismillah. Okay. Last but not least, the fifth most basic and important objective and element or necessity that Islamic Sharia or Islamic law came to preserve is wealth. Wealth and property. Wealth is not evil. It's not bad. It's necessary. It's needed. You can't take care of a family and raise a family without wealth. Right? If you don't have wealth to take care of your basic physical needs, you're going to go crazy. So you lose So wealth is very important. It's not complementary. It is something to be sought and something to be preserved and promoted. So Islam promotes, it's pro-business. It's pro-financial and economic prosperity, right? But at the same time, it's fair. So it promotes, being productive and, doing business and, manufacturing, and it promotes that. But at the same time, it also regulates it. So it does not allow one part of the society to exploit another part of the society, and for one people to be driven into poverty, and then another segment or a small percentage to control that. Because what's that going to do? It will destroy the individual. It will destroy families. It will make it very difficult. So Islam promotes prosperity, and it promotes entrepreneurship, and it allows people. There's nothing evil about it. There's nothing evil about wealth and prosperity. But at the same time, greed is something that we are warned of its evil consequences, right? And it also prohibits people from violating one another. You can't scam people. You can't steal. You can't. There is very severe punishment when it comes to violating the sanctity of someone else's wealth or property. And one of the reasons actually also usury is not allowed, right? It's because it's a form of exploiting people. I'll conclude by saying yesterday there was a seminar about financial transactions at the extension by two of the highest authorities that we have here in North America, Dr. Shaykh Salah Al-Sawi and Dr. Mana Al-Qudha. And Shaykh Salah, subhanAllah, mentioned something very beautiful. He said in Islam, investment is encouraged. But keep in mind that there are two types of business or dealings that you get. One is with God, and the other one is with people. In every transaction that you do with people, you see God's blessings. You have to do it in accordance. You have to be fair, and you have to be honest, and God will bless you. So in every transaction that you do with human beings, you can make as much profit as you can afford, or as you can make, right? But you have to be honest, and you have to be fair, right? And God will bless it. So in the transactions that you have with people, you're dealing with people, but you're also dealing with God, right? And then he said there are certain financial transactions that is between you and God only. There should be no other people, and that is charity, zakah, when you give something, or even giving people loans. So you have two ways to earn, actually there are three. One is zakat, right, which is mandatory. And then charity, or almsgiving, which is something that you're promoted or encouraged to do. You give people without expecting anything back. And then the third type of dealing with God the Almighty is when you loan someone money, help them out so they can get back on their feet or take care of one of their needs, and then they pay you back. Some people might say, well, why should I do that and I'm not getting anything for my... No, you're getting a lot of reward. You're getting blessings. You're getting grace from God, right? You're strengthening bond and relationship between you and people. When you help people, God helps you. And you help them today, they're going to help someone else tomorrow. That's how we spread, that's how we solidify this bond that we have. And that's why in the Quran, God said those who loan other people, they're actually giving a loan to who? To God, to Allah. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ. So the Shaykh was saying this idea that through loan you can make profit is something that we need to be very careful of. It's not allowed in Islam. And that's why interest or usury was prohibited. It's not a sound or ethical way to make money. You don't make money off money by giving people money and taking money for you can't rent money. You can't rent money, right? And he said this system is one of the most destructive systems to individuals and societies, and they don't see it. We only see it when there's huge economical meltdown or economical crisis, or like a recession, or not recession, what do they call it? Depression, or even recession. Then we see what happens. And if you remember what happened, right, 10 years ago, it was triggered by financial institutions practicing, right, the very thing that the Sharia came to prohibit and protect the society from. And it nearly destroyed us as a society. As a matter of fact, by the way, we actually didn't recover from it. They just slowed it down and they kind of just manipulated it. They played around it. But the debt is still there. Imagine there were numbers that just disappeared. Where did that money go? They weren't even there. It was all fake. But at the same time, a lot of people lost money while some people made a lot of money. And the very people that caused this whole mess and nearly destroyed like the society, some of them walked away with very fat commissions and money. So Islam prohibits this. Some of them are still in business. Some of them are going back to produce more toxic products and sell it to people. Right? Anyways, I don't want to make this into like a political, like I don't want to like be venting and, but there is a reason why. There were times, some people might say, well, it's very, one of the challenges that we have is like we don't have an Islamic, like a tangible moral and ethical model that we can look at and say, this is what prosperity means. This is a society where everybody is like, but there were times in our history where that happened. During the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, people used to go around and look for, in many regions of the Muslim land, they used to go and look for people to receive their zakah, and they couldn't find anyone. People used to beg for others to take something from them, like, I want to give charity, and there is no one who qualifies. No one. And that's when they started considering maybe we should ship it to other regions, right? There was a time where, in Islam, Muslims pay zakah, right? It's mandatory. Non-Muslim citizens of of an Islamic or Muslim society, right? They pay taxes for services and protection and all of that. They said there was a time where there was so much wealth that the taxes of the non-Muslims were paid from the zakah of the Muslims. Right? So there was no point of them paying zakah. You don't need to. I mean, everyone is wealthy. The country is wealthy. We're all doing what? We're all doing fine. So let's go to other areas and places where we can help people. There is no need. I mean, what we see right now of people dying of hunger, there should be no one. I mean, there's plenty of wealth. God has placed plenty of wealth and sustenance for all of His creation. Yet, there are people dying of... why is this happening? Greed. Greed. Right? Some people die of overeating, and others die of hunger. That's because there's an imbalance. There's greed. Right? So the religion came, and that's why, again, all of this ties to the first element. If there is no religion, then there will be no acknowledgement or recognition of this serious ailment that is actually single most destructive. Like, I mean, if you look at it, if you look at these 5 areas, if we can fix them, then we'll prosper, right? And we will continue to prosper. If we don't, if we can't preserve them, if we can't protect them, human family or race, as it was meant to happen, will go, will disappear. May Allah protect us and preserve us. Again, all of the issues that we're having are happening because we are not maintaining this balance. That divine guidance came to help us preserve and protect. We're creating serious imbalance everywhere. It's even affecting our ecosystem right now. Right? So we're creating massive amount of imbalance. If there was fair, honest, balanced pursuit of wealth, right? We wouldn't be seeing all the mess that we're seeing right now. So again, 5 objectives that Islamic law or Sharia came to preserve and protect, and every commandment came to preserve at least one, like the first one, or more of these 5 objectives. Remind me of them. What's the first one? Deen, religion, right? Okay. Number 2, life or self. Number 3, mind or intellect or reason. Number 4, lineage or family, right? And number 5 is property or wealth. Okay. Any questions or comments? Yes. Sure. ضروريات. ضروريات. Yeah. ضروريات is plural of ضرورة, which means necessity. Sorry, I have to put it this way. It gives me a headache, dude. It's not good for my mind. Yes.
You said the fourth one is kind of debated on its priority, but is it because that?
No, actually, it's not. It's not. I mean, yeah, because it makes sense. The order makes sense. Yeah.
The reason I ask is because when you talk about zina or out of wedlock relations, there are pretty severe punishments for that. So does that say how important that is, or dictate?
Ye- Yeah, I mean, sometimes the priority or the order is important in case there is something that appears to be conflicting between the two. So, for instance, right, prostitution is not allowed. No one can say, I have financial needs. I need to make money, which is the last one, right? By risking family values and lineage. You can't do that. It violates the fourth objective. So it's not allowed. Right? As a matter of fact, a person that has financial needs, whose fourth or fifth, need or necessity is not met, it's the society's obligation or the community's obligation to help that individual take care of that, so that it does not get to a point where it could risk family, right, or mental capacity, or even life, because people could lose their minds due to very severe financial difficulties, right? Yeah. Yes. Yes. No, giving loans is promoted. You get a lot of reward. What is not permissible is for you to take interest on that loan, to charge people interest. When you give loan, it's actually you're doing it for the sake of God and for the sake of helping this person. You're doing it solely. There is no benefit you get out of it. There is an indirect collateral or unintended, not unintended, indirect benefit that you get. The only bonus that you get is what? If you give a loan for a year, that loan that you give is exempt from zakah. You don't have to pay zakah on it, 2.5%. So that's the only thing that Sharia gives you.
But are we talking about individual loans or as a business loan, or
what I'm saying is that we live in a society and we live in a time, actually, everywhere you go, the business model, the whole industry is based on interest, right, and usury. The entire banking system is based on that. Divine guidance or divine teachings came to challenge and to fight. It's actually a war. God in the scripture declares war on that kind of system. That financial system that is interest-based is God, some people might say, what war? Look how it's prospering. It's not. It's fake. It's a bubble. And when the day comes when it bursts, it's going to be massive. And every now and then God gives us a glimpse, a reminder, right? As a matter of fact, I think that the reason it's just not completely collapsing is because there are still a lot of people who are still preserving, right, their commitment to God, whether it's based on Islamic guidance or on previous scriptures, who are not dealing with this. They're like, nope, I'm going to live loan-free, interest-free life, right? And I believe that, that is preserving us. Otherwise, what is to say that? I mean, by the way, they say the collapse of sometimes one of these giant or big, um, again, I'm not an economist, this is not my field. My brother-in-law is a professor of economics for like, more than 3 decades. Um, but experts who know the system, they tell you it's a very fragile, very vulnerable system. It's not as solid as we think it is, right? And that's why you have people like looking for alternatives, because this could just collapse, right? One thing can trigger this. As a matter of fact, there are no standards to begin with, right? There are people praying for the United States of America to stay strong, because if anything happens to the United States of America, what's going to happen? Only God knows, right? If the dollar collapses, it's going to be anarchy all over the world. And the only thing that is keeping the dollar strong is what? People say, our economy. No, Habibi, no, you're not your economy. It's the military. It's our military power. That's what is keeping things in order. By the grace of God, but if this falls apart, then God have mercy on us, right? Fortunately, we as human beings, as a human society, we possess we have access to very, very destructive, the most lethal and destructive power, right? And if one thing is triggered, all it takes is a push of a button, and this planet will be totally different. May Allah protect us. Sometimes it's very important, by the way, to realize how vulnerable we are, right? It's important to know that, and to know that every day we have peace, freedom, and safety and security is a day that we should praise God for. Every day that God keeps some people sane enough not to do something crazy, it's a day that we should be thankful for. Yeah. Yes, Jamal. Yeah. Get out of it as soon as you can, to the best of your ability. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us all overcome this challenge. Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, you can always negotiate. You can always go back and say, listen, yeah, I'm going to pay the principal, and that's what you have to pay. You need to waive the, yeah, yeah. I'm not the person to be asked this question. Yesterday, actually, we had Dr. Ma'an Quda gave a beautiful. Was anyone there? Dr. Ma'an Quda gave a presentation in English about that. But actually, you know what? This may not be a bad idea, actually, to bring experts. I don't have a house. I didn't buy a house. So we need to bring experts who will tell us, does it even make sense to buy a house? Especially in California. I'm just saying. By the way, go to Khan Academy. I'm not saying, I'm not even saying this from an Islamic point of view, right? So there is a debate on the whole issue, right? Does it really, so it depends on who you ask. And I don't think it's right for everyone. And I don't think it's, so I don't know, man. So, but I don't want you to think that I didn't buy a house because I didn't think it was right for me. It's just because I couldn't afford it, that's all. Man, I came from the East Coast, I don't know. I fell in love with this community. People say the weather, I don't care about the weather, I care about the people. But then, they didn't tell me that in 10 years it's going to be, it's, I didn't know that. the price of enjoying such a beautiful place was not be able to afford. Yeah. Anyways, may God help us. Let's all just move to Riverside. You know, let's all move to the desert. You know, yes. There is no Islamic bank. What they have is they have Sharia or Islam, compliant transactions or dealings or products. And guess who were the first people to actually create these products? Jewish bankers. Like I met someone who told me, because there are many Orthodox and Jews who don't deal with usury, don't deal with interest. So these banks developed products for their own customers, and they made it in such a way. I'll give you an example of it right now. And then they realized that there is another community who also have issues. Many of them are not buying homes; they're renting because they don't want to engage in interest-based. They don't want to get into. They can't get conventional loans, so they created these products that they were able to offer, and the Muslim community jumped on it. So basically, one of the models that they have is a model where you basically, you and the financial institution that is providing the loan, you buy a house together. You put 20% of the house down, right? And they put 80% of the price. So let's say it's $1 million home, you put 200,000, they put 800,000. Now, who owns it? Both of you. You own 20%, they own 80%. You pay fair market, like you agree on a rent that you pay. So let's say $1 million home, the rent for it is like 4,000, let's say it's 4,000, right? Okay, yeah, let's say it's 4,000. You own what? 20%. So you pay every month for 4,000, right? You pay 4,000 as rent to this financial institution. 3,200 will go towards you, like it's theirs. It's the rent because they own 80%. 800 is yours. It goes into not the principal. It goes into a special like fund, right? And over time, you will have enough to buy them out. Or every year, you assess how much you paid towards the principal, right? And you start owning that much of the house. So instead of owning by the end of the year, maybe now you own 5% more, right? And of course, there are issues. Islamically, there are issues with this. How often do you assess this? Every month, yearly? By yearly, how often do you do it? And how do you appraise the house? Because now, what if the house value diminishes or increases? So they try to work out around all of these little details. It's not 100% kosher, but it's there. So it's an option. So they created it, like they conditioned it in a way. Some people may look at it and they say like, oh, come on, dude, this is just a conventional loan. What's the difference between this and this? And Shaykh Ma'an yesterday was talking about how this argument is not new. In the old days, when God the Almighty, even before the Quran was in the Old Testament or in the New Testament, when God prohibited usury, people said, إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَى. It says that in the Quran. Taking interest is nothing but a business transaction. Right? No, I'm saying that they say it's a trade. It's a trade. We're trading. I'm trading something for something. Why is it prohibited? And God said, no, they're different. They're not the same. And the most important difference is what? وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعُ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. God made trade, exchanging of goods with money, God made that permissible. And God made exchanging money for extra money unlawful. That's the main difference. And then, of course, there are other differences. But the main difference is that God said, you can't do this. You shouldn't do this. Because God knows what this would lead to. And God said, you can't do this, but you can do this. You can exchange. You can come to me and say, I'll give you my shades, my sunglasses, for your sunglasses, or for your iPad. Right? If I agree, that's fine. Someone might come and say, hey, are you crazy? Your iPad for his sunglasses? I'm like, I've been looking for these eyeglasses. I would trade them for whatever. Or I might offer him cash. They may be worth, let's say, $80 on Amazon. But I've been looking for them for a long time. They're out of stock. They're not available. Maybe I'll pay him $100 for a pair of glasses, right? Because I want them. That's it. That's permissible. That's the difference between the two, right? If I lend him 80, or if he lends me $80 and I tell him tomorrow I'll give it to you 100, that's not allowed. The difference between the two, they may look the same to us, is one is permissible, the other one is what? Prohibited. وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Sometimes people have difficulty understanding this, so I always use an analogy. I give them an analogy. I say to them, brother X and sister Y, like two individuals, right, are married. People congratulate them. Their marriage is registered. Everybody knows that they're married. They're a couple. They're living together in a committed, official relationship that is legitimate, blessed. Right? God bless them. Two individuals. They love each other as much as these two love each other. And they are committed to each other, just verbally or emotionally. And they're living together and they're doing everything that this couple is doing, but they're not married. What's the difference? We tell them, Allah made this halal, permissible, and God the Almighty declared this to be impermissible. It's prohibited. That's the difference. You look at them, they sound and look the same, but they're not the same. It's the way you go about it, right? God, no? And also, it's a little more, when it comes to financial transaction, it's a little more complicated than that, because there are details that make a big difference, right? There's risk. You see, when a bank gives you money and tells you pay us back, they're taking very minimum amount of risk, and they have a collateral. If you fail to pay it, they're going to take the house. They're not losing anything, and you lose everything that you paid. It's not fair. But when you're partners, what happens is, like, let's say you can't afford the rent anymore, or you were transferred, you have to go somewhere else. You still own 25% or 30%, whatever you managed to earn. So you're a 30% owner. So the house is sold. If it's sold for more, everybody makes profit. If it's sold for less, everyone, the loss is distributed proportionally. You get my point? Fair. It's fair. Yes? Yeah. True. You can. As long as the product you're investing in is permissible, you can. Yeah. Yeah. So you can invest, let's say, in alcoholic beverage companies. You cannot. Like Budweiser. Yeah, because it's not permissible. The product they're selling is not permissible. But, all right, stem cell research, like, pharmaceutical companies that are not doing any technology. So there are certain sectors. The two main sectors that you can't mess with is any sector that is dealing with, like food industry that is dealing with prohibited substance, or like beverages, right? And financial institutions, Bank of America, whatever. Remember Wachovia? Guys, anyone remembers Wachovia? Okay. All right, you can't mess with these, right? But like technology, pharmaceutical companies, biomedical technology, things like that, Yeah. Yes. Last question. I know that it doesn't sound right. Oil companies, like oil, oil industry, it's not like, but that's not the primary object use for it. Yeah, how people misusing it is not your. People use technology for all kinds of crazy reasons, right? For violent, like extremists, use it. Porn industry uses it. They use technology. I mean, so it's not your fault that the company that you're investing in sells products that people misuse, because that's not what they were intended for. Yeah, right. Yes. Any more questions or objections? Okay. All right.
Let's say we fire a mechanic and the guy that brings his car to be fixed he owns a liquor store. Is it okay if I fix his car?
His personal car or his or the truck that they use for
It doesn't matter his personal car or his truck, the one they use.
his personal car is fine. The truck that is used to transfer alcohol, that could be an issue. Let me research it. But that is a very interesting question. That's a very practical, amazing, interesting question. You know, I am inclined to say, if I was to ask my teachers, they will say it's permissible because it's not your. I'm inclined to say that, but I could be wrong. But I will, but that's an amazing question. Yeah, his own personal car, right? Especially if it's like a German car, fix it and test drive it. That's fine. Just to make sure that the car is, and if you need help to, figure out what's wrong with it, call me. Inshallah, I'll come and help you. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك. I really enjoyed this session. Thank you very much, Barakallah fiik.
I want to thank Shaykh Mohammad for taking time out. Thank you so much.
I hope the session was fine.
It was great. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
By the way, inshallah, we are about, inshallah, to launch and announce Hajj and Umrah packages here, the Masjid, CIU, Merit Academy. And if anyone is planning or interested during the spring break, Thanksgiving, or Christmas, or Hajj during the Hajj season, get ready, inshallah, Azza wa Jal. At least make your intention. Make your intention and say, yeah, I want to do it, Year 2019, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully, both myself and Sheikh Mustafa will go, inshallah. So I would love to have as many people from this group, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much. Okay, a few things, brothers and sisters. So welcome. Really good to have everyone here. As you can tell, the PowerPoint was amazing. Right. My apologies about our VGA wire was a little messed up. So our apologies about not having it on the screen. So you guys looked at that for about 45 minutes. So no, we have it. Just something wrong with it, but we'll get it situated. So my apologies about that. A few things that are coming up. Number one, as I've been mentioning, our new Muslim retreat for our new Muslim and convert family members. This is amazing. So please keep February 3rd, which is Sunday. If you can pencil that in on your calendars, that'll be great. We're going to try to go out to the foothills or the mountains, have a one-day retreat. We're just finalizing the details right now. So we have a committee that's working on that right now. So just be a little patient with us, but we'll give you the exact details very soon. But again, February 3rd, which is Sunday, most likely we'll probably do a potluck and a barbecue out, go for a nice hike and, just have a good time together. So please keep that marked up. Secondly, another date you want to keep is Friday, January 25th. So about 2 weeks from now, we have Al-Maghrib coming. Al-Maghrib is a institution that goes around and teaches about many different topics and aspects about Islam. We're very blessed to have Brother Ammar Shukri coming. So it's going to be probably a pretty large-scale event. So most likely we're going to be inside the prayer hall. Many times when we have this organization that comes, we have a lot of people that come out. So I would advise you try to get here as soon as possible. On our WhatsApp groups that we do have, I'll text everyone. And if you're not on our WhatsApp groups for the sisters or the brothers or the mentors, let me know. I'll go ahead and get you in. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it starts probably around 7:30-ish. but I will give you the exact details. But try to come as soon as you can, so because of the parking and so forth, right? The second event we have, February 15th. A lot of events coming up, so this is good. February 15th, as you guys know, we do a lot of creative programming here to make sure people come to the mosque and topics are relevant. So we have a event coming up. If you guys remember, about 2 years ago, we did something called Locked Up. We have many people that actually embrace Islam in prison and in jails. So when they come out, we really like to hear about them and their journey and some of the challenges and difficulties that they face. So we're going to have that event coming up, which is going to be amazing. So that's going to be February 15th. In addition to that, we're going to also have taco night. So, you know, we're going to bring back halal taco night. So make sure you guys have time and come. They'll be starting 6 p.m. The event itself will be at 8 p.m. Okay? And our Quran class, yes, good reminder. You guys know here every Sunday and I think every Wednesday we have a beginner's level or a new Muslim class for learning how to read the Quran, just the basics, the alphabet, and how to get started. How many of you are still enrolled or attending these classes? I know a number of you were. Anybody still? Yes, maybe? No? One? Sister Maya? It's on Wednesdays and Sundays. So Sundays from 12 to 1 p.m. No. You got another one? Yeah. So for those of you, if you're interested and you don't have those details, but you're able to maybe on Sundays from 12 to 1 p.m., so it'll just be 1 hour before our class starts approximately. If you're interested, let me know. I'll go ahead and connect you with the Quran Institute that we have here. Next door is free. I would really encourage you guys, please, to try to do your best. We start with the alphabet and just kind of go from there. So I think that'll be really good for everyone to do. Any questions? Yes? Wednesdays, let me find out for you. I think it's in the evenings, around 6 or 7. But I know Sundays is at 12 o'clock. But I'll get those details for you, inshallah. Questions? Everyone doing all right? I'm just looking to make sure everyone is. As if your head's not spinning enough with those numbers. And so all right. So, yeah, Sister Sumaya. Yes, if I had the details. I don't quite have the details right now. All I know is it's going to be amazing. You don't want to miss it. You want to mark that on your calendar, and it's going to be on Sunday, February 3rd. As you guys know, right, the first Sunday of every month is our potluck socializing event. Like last week we had, it was amazing. So we're going to try to go out this time as well. So again, we need a lot of help with the events like this, right? It's hard for 1 or 2 people to do it. So if anybody's in a position to volunteer and help us with these events, they'll be much appreciated. Everyone all right? And last but certainly not least, you are okay there, brother or sister? Can't quite tell. They're behind the wall. So last but certainly, Asim, you're right there? Right. Doing some jujitsu or yeah. Yeah. And last but certainly not least, very blessed here at IIOC, specifically our new Muslim classes that we have on Fridays and Sundays. We have typically every week, if not every other week, people joining us for the first time. So today is no exception. We're very blessed to have Sister Alexandria joining us here today. For the first time, she embraced Islam about 3 weeks ago in the Mission Viejo area. So we want to welcome our sister to class. So please make sure to introduce yourself, sisters, to our dear sister. Having said that, if everybody can help me, we'll fold up the tables and chairs, put them on the racks, please. And then the trash we can put away. And if there's any extra leftover food, please help yourself, make a plate, and take it home. We'll see everybody on Friday, inshallah. Yeah. So for those of you, if you want to go back and review the 5 points of the class today, we stream this live. So if you go on YouTube, just go on IIOC Outreach, and you'll go ahead and get our link. All the videos are there. So IIOC Outreach on YouTube, and all the videos there. Inshallah. Also, 3:15 is going to be the Asr prayer, the late afternoon prayer. So it's about 15 minutes. So if you guys need to refresh your wudu and join us, that'll be great, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Also, my apologies, two flyers that I put on the table. One is the Mercy for Rohingya event that's coming up. So please make sure if you can attend. Secondly, as you know, one of our sisters, Sister Marlene, started her own catering business. So please, if you are able to support her, that will be great, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.